What if I told you that the reason you'll probably work until you're 67 has almost nothing to do with your savings rate, your investment strategy, or how disciplined you are with money? You've heard all the advice. Max out your 401k, live below your means, start early, and let compound interest do its magic. And look, that's not bad advice. It's just incomplete. Because here's what nobody's telling you. The entire financial system you're operating in, the debt structures, the retirement ages, the tax incentives, the lifestyle pressures, none of it was designed with your freedom in mind. It was designed to keep you productive, to keep you consuming, to keep you in the game for as long as possible. And I'm not talking about some shadowy conspiracy. I'm talking about simple economics and structural incentives that have been building for nearly a century. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how this system works, why the default path almost guarantees you'll be working well into your 60s, and what the people who actually break free understand that everyone else misses. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but the finish line keeps moving further away, this video is going to explain why, and more importantly, what you can do about it. Let's start with something most people never think to question: the retirement age. 65, 67, whatever number you've got in your head as the finish line. Have you ever asked yourself where that number came from? Because here's the thing. It wasn't chosen based on when humans become unable to work. It wasn't based on studies about cognitive decline or physical capability, or when people naturally want to stop contributing. It was an actuarial decision, a math problem. And the math wasn't designed to benefit you. Let me take you back to 1935. The Great Depression is devastating the country. Elderly poverty is rampant. So the government creates Social Security, and they need to pick an age when benefits kick in. They chose 65. Now here's what's fascinating. In 1935, the average life expectancy in America was about 61 years old. Let that sink in for a second. The government set the retirement age at 65 when most people weren't expected to live past 61. They were essentially saying, sure, we'll take care of you in old age, knowing full well that most workers would never collect. It was a promise designed to cost as little as possible. Now fast forward to 2026. Average life expectancy in America is around 77, 78 years old. That's 16, 17 years longer than when Social Security was created. But here's what's interesting. The retirement age has barely moved. It sat at 65 for decades. Now it's creeping towards 67 for anyone born after 1960. We're living 16 years longer, but we're only being allowed to retire 2 years later. So where did those extra 14 years go? They went to work. And I want you to really think about this. When Social Security was designed, the average worker spent maybe a year or two collecting benefits before dying. That was the deal. Work your whole life, get a brief rest at the end, then you're done. Today, a healthy 67-year-old might live another 15, 20 years. That changes everything about how the system has to function, because now retirement isn't a brief twilight. It's an entire chapter of life, and that chapter is expensive. So what are the options? From a policy perspective, there are really only three: raise taxes significantly, cut benefits significantly, or keep people working longer. And guess which one requires the least political courage? Every few years, some policy expert floats the idea of raising retirement age to 70, 72. The justification is always the same. People are living longer. They can work longer. They should work longer. But notice what's never questioned: the assumption that your time should belong to the economy for as long as the economy needs it. If that idea makes you a little uncomfortable, good. It should. Now, if this is hitting different than the usual financial advice you hear, if you're starting to see some patterns you hadn't noticed before, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you're new here and you want financial content that actually makes you think, instead of just recycling the same tired formulas, subscribe to the channel. I think you'll find this is a different kind of conversation. All right, let's keep going. Because the retirement age is just the beginning. Let's talk about debt. And I want to be clear up front. Debt isn't inherently evil. It's a tool. Taking on a mortgage for a house, borrowing to start a business, using leverage strategically, these can be smart moves. But here's what I need you to understand. There's a difference between using debt as a tool and being architected into debt by design. Because when you look at the timeline of a typical American life, a pattern starts to emerge, and it's not an accident. You're 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and the message is crystal clear. Go to college. Invest in yourself. Education is the path to opportunity. And that's true, to an extent. But it also means that by 22, 23, you're starting your adult life already in the hole. The average student loan balance right now is somewhere around $37,000, $38,000. For many graduates, that's a $400 monthly payment, sometimes way more. That payment follows you into your 30s, often into your 40s. But here's where it gets interesting. Right around your late 20s, early 30s, the next message kicks in. You should buy a house. Renting is throwing money away. Building equity is the smart move. It's the American dream. And maybe it is smart for some people, but let's be honest about what's happening. You're trading one form of long-term debt for another, a 30-year mortgage, 360 monthly payments. If you buy at 32, you're paying it off at 62. Just in time for retirement. Convenient, isn't it? And in between, there's a car loan here, a credit card balance there, maybe a home equity line for renovations or the kids' braces. Each one seems reasonable in isolation. Each one adds another thread to the web. Now here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. When you're in debt, you are not free. I don't mean that philosophically. I mean it practically. When you owe money every single month, you need a paycheck every single month. You can't take a year off to figure things out. You can't say no to the promotion that requires 80-hour weeks and wrecks your health. You can't walk away from a job that's slowly crushing your soul. Debt turns your future labor into a commodity that's already been sold. You've pre-committed years of your life to payments before you even know what those years will look like. And the system knows this. That's why credit is so easy to get. That's why buy now, pay later is everywhere. That's why minimum payments are set just high enough to cover interest, but low enough to keep you paying for decades. The question isn't whether debt is good or bad. The question is, who designed this system, and what behavior was it designed to produce? When you map out the full arc, you're encouraged to borrow at every major life stage: education, housing, transportation, lifestyle, each time locking in years of future payments. And by the time you're free of all those obligations, you're close to the age where the system says you're finally allowed to rest. That's not a coincidence. That's architecture. Let's talk about something more subtle now. Something that doesn't feel like a trap because it feels like success. Lifestyle inflation. Here's how it usually goes. You get your first real job out of college. Maybe you're making $50,000 a year. You get a modest apartment, drive a used car, cook at home most nights. Money's tight, but you're fine. Actually, you're pretty content. Then you get a raise, $65,000. And somewhere along the way, you move to a nicer place. The rent's higher, but hey, you can afford it now. You've earned it. A few years later, you're making $80,000. You buy a house, finance a new car, start eating out more, upgrade your wardrobe because you need to look the part. 10 years in, you're making $120,000. On paper, you should be wealthy. You should have options. But somehow, you're just as stuck as you were at 50. Here's what happened. At every income level, you calibrated your lifestyle to match your paycheck. There was never any surplus, never any escape velocity, just a more expensive version of the same treadmill. And here's what really gets me about this. This pattern doesn't happen by accident. There's an entire industry, actually multiple industries, devoted to making sure your spending keeps pace with your earning. Think about advertising. Think about social media. Think about the constant stream of messages telling you what your life should look like at every stage. Entry-level job? Here's the apartment you deserve. First promotion? Time to upgrade your wardrobe. Director title? You should really be driving something that reflects your status. The message is always the same. You've earned this. You deserve this. Treat yourself. And those messages aren't wrong, exactly, but they serve a purpose. They keep you dependent. Because here's the math nobody shows you. A person earning $150,000 who spends $140,000 is not wealthy. They're not free. They're one layoff away from crisis. They're completely dependent on the next paycheck, same as someone making a third of their salary. But a person earning $80,000 who spends $50,000, that person has options. That person is building something. That person is quietly buying back their future, month by month. The system doesn't celebrate that person. The system barely acknowledges they exist because the system needs consumers. It needs spenders. It needs workers. The moment you step off that conveyor belt, you become invisible to the machine. And that's exactly where freedom starts. Now let's get into something almost nobody finds interesting, but everyone should understand: the tax code. I know, not exactly thrilling, but stay with me here, because this is where you really start to see how the game is structured. The tax code isn't just a way to fund the government. It's a behavioral tool. It's designed to encourage certain actions and discourage others. And when you look at which actions are encouraged, a pattern emerges. Buying a house is encouraged. Mortgage interest deduction, property tax deduction. The system wants you locked into that 30-year obligation. Employer-sponsored retirement accounts are encouraged, but in a very specific way. You get a tax break now for contributing to your 401k, but you can't touch that money until 59 and a half without a penalty. And when you finally do withdraw it, you pay taxes then. So yes, the system helps you save for retirement, but it also makes sure that money stays locked away for decades, keeping you in the workforce until the approved age. Meanwhile, what happens if you want to build something different? Independent income streams? Assets that cash flow now instead of in 30 years? Those paths exist, but the tax code doesn't make them easy. Self-employment taxes are brutal. Small business complexity is overwhelming. The advantages that exist, like real estate depreciation or qualified business income deductions, require sophisticated knowledge that most people don't have. The point isn't that the system is rigged against you. The point is that it isn't neutral. It has preferences, and those preferences tend to align with keeping people in traditional employment, carrying traditional debt, following the traditional timeline. When you understand this, you can start working with the rules that benefit you and finding legal ways around the ones that don't. But you have to see the game first, and most people never look close enough to notice there's a game being played at all. So where does all this leave us? Look, I'm not here to tell you the system is evil. It's not some grand conspiracy. It's just incentives playing out over decades. Institutions doing what institutions do, which is perpetuate themselves. But I am here to tell you this. The system is not going to hand you freedom. It's not designed to. The default path, the one everyone follows without questioning, leads somewhere very specific. It leads to working until you're 67 because you have to, not because you want to, because you never built another option. And here's what I've learned from studying people who actually break free from this. They're not smarter than you. They're not luckier. They just made a decision, usually early, that their time was more valuable than their stuff. And they acted on that decision consistently, for years, even when nobody noticed, even when it felt like sacrifice, even when everyone around them was upgrading and consuming and playing the game. Freedom doesn't mean being rich. It doesn't mean never working again. Some of the freest people I know work constantly. They just work on things they choose, with people they respect, on a schedule they control. Freedom means options. It means being able to say no to things that don't serve you. It means having enough margin in your life that one bad month doesn't become a catastrophe. It means controlling your time before you're 67. And building that kind of freedom usually means going against the current. It means saving more than your peers think is reasonable. It means driving a car that doesn't impress anyone. It means living in a house you could afford on half your income. It means saying no to upgrades and lifestyle creep that seem harmless, but compound into decades of dependency. None of that is easy. None of it is glamorous. But the alternative is hoping. Hoping the system keeps its promises. Hoping your body holds up. Hoping your job still exists when you need it. And hoping is not a plan. Here's the thing about systems. They're designed by people. And people design systems that serve their interests. The modern financial system, with its debt timelines and retirement ages and consumption expectations, wasn't built around your freedom. It was built to keep the machine running. That doesn't make anyone a villain. It's just how systems work. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand that the default path leads to working forever, or at least until the system decides you're done, you can start making different choices. Small ones at first. Paying off debt faster than required. Saving more than feels comfortable. Asking whether the next upgrade is really worth the extra years of work. Those small choices compound into options, into flexibility, into something that starts to feel like control over your own life. The system will never give you permission to leave. That's not what it's for. But that doesn't mean you can't build an exit anyway. One decision at a time, starting whenever you decide to start. If you want to escape the system and the rat race, check out more of our videos. I'll see you there.